This is the story of three young Hebrew men and how their faith in God brought them through fire, literally. In the ancient city of Babylon, a land marked by towering ziggurats and bustling streets, lived Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These weren't just any men. They were Israelite captives, chosen for their wisdom, knowledge, and aptitude to serve in the palace of King Nebuchadnezzar. Though surrounded by a foreign culture, they never forgot the God of their ancestors. King Nebuchadnezzar, a mighty ruler, decided to craft a towering image of gold, nearly 90 feet high, shimmering under the blazing sun of Babylon. He decreed a royal mandate to all, saying, "Whenever you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the golden image that I have set up. Whoever does not bow will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace." Understandably, this put everyone in Babylon, including Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in a tight spot. The moment came. Music filled the air, casting a festive yet heavy atmosphere over the Babylonian plain. As multitudes of people bowed low before the colossal idol, three young men stood defiantly in their faith. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down. Eyes shifted. Whispers spread. And very soon, their defiance reached the ears of the king. Furious at their disobedience, Nebuchadnezzar summoned them to his court. Standing before a man who could end their lives in an instant, the young men were remarkably calm. "Is it true," thundered the king, "that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image I have set up? If you are ready to fall down and worship the image when the music plays, well and good. But if you do not, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" In response, their voices resonated with extraordinary faith. "O king," they said, "we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image you have set up." These words only fueled the king's rage. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. As the fiery blaze roared, so intense that the heat itself killed the soldiers tasked with throwing them in, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were bound and tossed into the inferno. It seemed their story would end here, in fire and fury. But God had a different plan. Observers, and even King Nebuchadnezzar himself, couldn't believe their eyes. They rose to their feet in astonishment. "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" the king exclaimed. "Yes, Majesty," his advisors replied. "Look," he shouted, "I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." The fiery furnace, meant to be their end, became a holy sanctuary. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not alone. God was with them, protecting them in the face of overwhelming odds. Flames that had consumed the very soldiers who threw them in couldn't even singe their clothing, nor touch their skin. When Nebuchadnezzar called them out of the fire, the crowd watched in astonishment as they emerged unscathed. Not a hair on their heads was burned, nor did they even smell of smoke. The king, once so adamant in his own strength and might, was left humbled and awestruck. "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," he declared, "who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command. They were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Therefore, I decree that anyone who says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses turned into piles of rubble, for no other god can save in this way." And like that, what seemed to be an attempt to force conformity resulted in glory for God and the triumph of faith. Because 3 young men chose to honor God above all, even their very lives. Their testimony spoke volumes not just to their peers, but also to a powerful pagan king. Their story reminds us even today to trust in the Lord, who is mighty to save no matter the circumstance. So what does this mean for us? For one, it reminds us that faith doesn't promise an easy road, but it does assure us of God's presence through the storm, or fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't know for certain they'd be delivered. They only knew they wouldn't bow. They stood firm, not because they were fearless, but because their faith was unshakable. Sometimes holding on to faith means defying an easier path, even if the consequences seem dire, trusting that God sees and acts in His perfect timing. And just like this ancient story, the fiery furnaces in our own lives, whether they be challenges in faith, courage, or fortitude, might feel overwhelming. But remember, God stands with those who remain steadfast. That same God who walked in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walks with us too. Trust in Him, and you will find yourself untouched, unburned, and victorious on the other side. If this story inspires you, share it, spread the hope, and remember that no trial is greater than the God we serve.